Okay.
Hello team and welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan MS Pearce. This is a bit of an extra today concerning the Russian Federation, and that's already a bone of contention, and their place in the UN on the UN Security Council. I'm going to be talking about this issue with Talaria, who will introduce herself in a wee while. I just want to play you a bit of an introduction to the UN Security Council that I think might be a good intro to the topic today. So just listen to this.
The United Nations Security Council works to maintain international peace and security. It discusses and sometimes votes on potential solutions to a wide range of global challenges, from the spread of nuclear weapons to armed conflicts to even climate change. 15 countries sit on the council. 5 are permanent members. They're always on the council, and they have the power to veto any council decision. The other 10 countries are non-permanent members. They're elected by the UN General Assembly for 2-year terms. They can vote just like the 5 permanent members, but they do not have veto power over council decisions. When the council does vote, a majority of at least 9 members must vote yes, without any vetoes, in order for the council to take action. At these meetings, one member acts as president of the UN Security Council, where they moderate council discussions. This role rotates every month, shifting from one member to another in alphabetical order. The UN Secretary General, the head of the UN, is often at council meetings. They aren't a council member and don't have a vote, but they do set the agenda for council discussions and help identify the problems the council should try to solve. Council meetings can also be attended by non-member countries that are involved in a crisis, along with experts who can provide important information, helping council members work for peace and security.
So there we go. That's an introduction to the UN Security Council. Of course, we might wonder what the UN is as a whole and what its role is in our world. But before we talk about that, thank you for your patience, Talaria. Would you like to introduce yourself and what you want to tell the audience about who you are and how you've come to be interested in this?
Yes. Hello, Jonathan. Good to talk. I'm a lawyer from the other end of the world. I originally come from New Zealand, and I'm a very long way away from what is happening in Europe, the Middle East, and Africa. I'm 1/16 Ukrainian. I'm not pro-Ukrainian. I'm pro-justice. And as we've seen in that documentary, the job of the Security Council is to maintain peace. And it's not doing it, which caused me to start looking very closely at what was going wrong. The United Nations was set up in 1945 by a large number of countries in the world, and now pretty much every country in the world belongs to it, with a couple of small exceptions, such as Taiwan, which there's a dispute about it, and, as I have ascertained, Russia.
Yes, that is the bone of contention, because of course, you know, history moves on and certain countries don't kind of catch up with our understanding of what that country is, and so on and so forth, and therein lies a confusion. The way I understand it, the United Nations, there are 4 pillars: peace and security, human rights, the rule of law, and development. And we're going to be dealing with peace and security mainly, obviously, because of the UN Security Council. Just to let people know, there are 6 organs of the UN General Assembly, and you'll be talking a little bit about that. the UN Secretariat that basically administers what the UN General Assembly dictate should happen or say should happen, policies. They're the administrative function. You've got the International Court of Justice, UN Security Council. That's our main topic of conversation, but also UN Economic and Social Council and the UN Trustee Council, which is actually defunct at the moment. So really mainly 5 areas of the UN. Anyway, sorry, that's just to add to what you were saying.
Yeah. All right. So from the other end of the world, we have a bird's eye view here. And what I'm seeing is international anarchy and gang wars and protection rackets being run on the other side of the world. The United Nations was specifically set up to stop aggression and ensure disputes were settled legally and peacefully. I saw some mentions of why it wasn't working, and that was that Russia was vetoing any action. Of course, it's vetoing actions in its own gang warfare behavior or terrorism. So then I saw, as I explored, some mentions of Russia not being on the United Nations. And this is a case that Ukraine and a number of other countries and experts have made. And so I dug down into this because I couldn't find anything on the net. And I've gone right back to the original documents. And here's what I found: 4 lies, which I will deal with in turn. Number 1, Russia is in the UN. Number 2, you can't remove Russia from the UN without reforming the UN. And number 3, the United Nations can't use force to stop aggression. So to deal with the first issue, which is really the essence of the whole situation, Russia is in the UN. No, it's not. Russia has never joined the United Nations. There's only 2 ways to join the United Nations as a general member. And the general member is a member of the General Assembly with all of the countries in the world. The first way is to be a foundation member. And I've sent you, Jonathan, a number of screenshots. One of those screenshots is of articles 3, 4, and 3 to 6 of the United Nations Charter, which is the document which sets out all of the rules of the United Nations. Now, when the United Nations was started up, there were 3 foundation members from the USSR. There was the USSR itself, there was Ukraine, and there was Belarus. Russia did not join as a foundation member. And after the foundation members all joined, there was only one way. There it is there. Article 4 is the only way that any country can become a member of the United Nations. We're not talking about the Security Council at the moment. We're talking about just general membership of the United Nations. And you will see there that a state has to be actually admitted by decision of the General Assembly after a recommendation of the Security Council. That has never occurred. So Russia has never joined the United Nations. The next, if we scroll down a little bit further to Article 23, and I will deal with permanent membership of the Security Council. which is the membership which holds the veto. Now, this is the article in the United Nations Charter, again, which is the rules how the United Nations functions. And you will see there it says the Security Council shall consist of 15 members, and then it names China, France, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, the United Kingdom, and the United States as permanent members. Now, the USSR was abolished on the 21st of December 1991. It no longer exists. Russia was one of 15 states which were members of the USSR. Russia had no special status in the USSR. The USSR was formed by a treaty between 4 states. It was formed as a separate umbrella state, separate from its members. And if we scroll up to the USSR Constitution excerpt, which I think is probably fairly close to the top.
Yeah. There we go.
Here we are. All right, now this is the 1936 version, but it says the same, much the same as the original treaty. And you can see there, Article 13 states the USSR is a federal state formed on the basis of the voluntary association of the republics having equal rights. So, and then Article 15 below that, and the articles preserve the statehood of the members. So they remain states in their own right. They have the right to secede from the USSR. So what we've got is the USSR is not Russia. It is a federal state with 15 members. And ironically, Russia actually left the USSR before the USSR was abolished. So at the time that the USSR stopped existing, Russia wasn't even a member of it.
So that's really interesting, because that means at the time USSR still would have been on the Security Council, but it would have been for some period of time on the Security Council without Russia in it.
No. Oh, yes.
Yeah,
Correct.
yeah, and so therefore you've even more so got this issue that there is this disparity between the USSR and Russia, because Russia was on the Security Council without USSR was on the Security Council without Russia being in it, and then it kind of formally disintegrated, and Russia just assumed that role that it previously hadn't even been in, that at least for some short period of time. It's incredible.
Correct. And of course, there is the other issue where the initial members of the United Nations Foundation members were the USSR and 2 of its member states, which were Belarus and Ukraine. So that just highlights that Russia wasn't any of its states. It was a completely separate umbrella entity. So there we have no inheritance. Russia did not inherit anything from the USSR.
Absolutely. And so, I presume that also means that Ukraine and Belarus would have equal rights to that seat as the Russian Federation presently do.
No. What we have here is, this is another piece of disinformation fudging by the disinformation industry, and we know exactly where it comes from. And what they've done is they've said it's a seat. Now, if I can use the example of your House of Lords in the United
Mhm.
Kingdom, you have life peers appointed. They're appointed for life. What happens when they die to that membership?
That's the end of that membership, and you elect someone new.
That's the end of that
Or not.
membership.
Yeah.
That's the end of that membership. It's not a seat. A seat is a colloquialism for a place to sit. There is no magic to it. When a life peers dies, his or her seat dissolves. It's no longer a seat. There
Right.
isn't a seat.
That's a really
So we
important
are now,
clarification.
yeah, and for people who are not familiar with the House of Lords, think of it as a membership of your electoral roll, electing your government. All right, you are a member of the electoral roll. What happens to your membership when you die?
I presume what this kind of means is that there it isn't constitutionally dictated that there has to be 5, founding members that continue to, there aren't 5 seats. There just happen to be 5 members. And if one
Yes,
of the, as you say, is one of those members disappears, then there are 4 members rather
yes,
than we have to have 5 vetoing members.
yes. There are 4. There were 5 named members, and there are now 4 because one of them has ceased to exist.
Yeah.
The permanent membership, the named membership, has not gone up to membership purgatory, sitting up there waiting for some other country to descend upon, like some biblical
Yeah. Just comes
allegory.
in. But
Right?
that's
But it's
essentially what's
gone.
happened though.
Finished. Yes, it's totally finished. It does not exist anymore. It went out of existence when, and if we scroll down to
Yeah.
on our list of documents, down to the Balavisha, next one down, those 2 right there, just above there. Okay, so here we have the 8th of December. This is the date that Russia left the USSR, and you will see here that they signed a treaty called the Belavezha Accord. This was Belarus, the Russian Federation, and Ukraine. The 3 states signed an agreement actually abolishing the USSR, but they couldn't abolish the USSR. All they could do was leave it because, of course, there were still 8 members left in the USSR.
Which
However,
itself, that itself shows that Russia wasn't like the keystone to the USSR, that wasn't somehow larger and assumed more responsibility and more regulatory power or whatever than everyone else. So it's like, well, we want to dissolve it, but we can't. Like Russia saying, look, we can't, so we just have to leave it.
Well, no, they didn't say we can't because Russia doesn't operate like that. They just say we can. So that's exactly what they've done. We hereby declare 3 of the members hereby declare that the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics as a subject of international law and a geopolitical reality no longer exists.
But as you
All
said
right.
earlier,
So
it
then
did
we go
kind of
down
exist for a
further.
bit though, didn't it?
So then we go down further, and helpfully they have, by the way, all of those documents in there have all got links either written on them or clickable links to the originals. But you'll see highlighted there is that they have withdrawn from
Yeah.
the USSR. So they've said two two conflicting things, but there is one thing that is beyond any question, and that's that Ukraine, Belarus, and Russia left, and Russia ratified that treaty on the 12th of December. So we can take that as the official day that it left, on the 12th of December. So now we scroll down to the next document, and that you'll see is dated, 2 weeks later, or a little under, or 10 days later. No, nearly 2 weeks later. And now all of the remaining members in the USSR, the other 8 members, have left and declared, or agreed, should we say, that the if we just scroll down a little bit, oh no, it's not there. The top green line, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics ceases to exist. And what they've actually done is they've made it retrospective back to the 8th of December. But basically, we take it as the 21st of December, because you can't abolish something retrospectively. When all of the members have said that it's no longer existing, it stops existing.
So I'm just wondering, because you've added here at the top that Armenia didn't sign up to this. Does this mean that Armenia is the USSR now? Can Armenia just sit on the? Can they be there on the Security Council going, "We're still here"?
As far as I can see, Kazakhstan was the last one, but I think that I'll have to double check on that, because I thought Armenia signed the next document, but I couldn't see their signature on this document. So yes, if I haven't made a mistake there, then they might be still in the USSR. But however, this subsequent document, now this is the one that is really this is really Russia, Yeltsin trying to pull the wool, as we say in New Zealand.
You've got a lot of wool to pull there.
Now, here, what they've done is, out of the 15 members of the USSR, Yeltsin has managed to herd up 11 of them to say that they support the continued membership of the USSR, Russia continuing the USSR's membership in the UN. Okay, now for a start, it doesn't have authority. For a start, Russia wasn't even in the USSR when that document was made. That's the 21st of December, the same day. He's basically run around trying to. He's realised he's made a dreadful mistake. Or else he's been pointed out to him that he could make a grab for this so-called veto that doesn't exist anymore, because the USSR its holder doesn't exist. And so Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, they haven't agreed to this. And even if the entire 15 of them had, as I've set out in the note on there, it would be like if you, Jonathan, were one of 15 siblings, and you got together with 11 of your brothers and sisters after your mother died, and you decided that you could exercise her vote in the general elections of your government. Now, what happens if you go and exercise her vote with that authority?
Well, basically, it would be election fraud, and I'd be had
up. Go to jail.
Yeah. Well, so it's interesting. So going back to the UN General Assembly, one of the things the General Assembly does, which is all the countries in the world, one of the things they have is a 2/3 vote on countries that are admitted to them. As it says here, most questions are decided in the General Assembly by a simple majority. Each member country has one vote, voting on certain important questions, namely recommendation on peace and security, budgetary concerns, and election, admission, suspension, or expulsion of members by a 2/3 majority. So it's the General Assembly, then, as I understand it, that should be doing that, not member states of the former Soviet Union, and even then, an arbitrary number of them.
Well, as I said, it's like a bunch of brothers and sisters getting together saying that one of them can use their mother's right
Yeah,
to vote in the government elections. It's just
doesn't.
totally meaningless.
Yeah, yeah. Point taken.
Absolutely, completely, totally meaningless. They have no authority. That doesn't change the United Nations Charter.
Yeah.
The United Nations Charter has got a rule, and Russia has never been admitted. Now, but
And
what's happened?
so I was just going to say, for viewers watching here, by the way, all of this documentation is being really well put together and highlighted in a way that makes it easy to understand the thinking that you're putting in here. And it's all available. That there are 2 links below in the video below. So if you want to check out Talaria's work that she's done here, which is, I think, really, really valuable, please do so. Please check out her Substack. Anyway, Karen.
Right. And there's just a little bit more of an irony that the USSR, of course, has not authorized this because it wasn't in existence anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. So it wasn't even
But
the
it couldn't.
USSR. They were just disparate.
But you
Forms.
can't transfer. You cannot transfer seats in the United Nations, and there's a very good reason for that, because countries would be trading seats. And
Yeah.
you cannot trade seats in the United Nations. You can't give your seat to somebody else and say you can use it. It's just, now what is needed. So now we go back to USSR is named in the Article 23, and Russia is not named in Article 23. Now, in order to change the permanent members, to add or change any permanent member, that requires an amendment of Article 23, which is an amendment of the Charter itself, which is, I haven't put a screenshot of Article 108 in there. 108, Article 108 has requirements for amendment of the Charter. Now, so what we've got is, if I can just point out at this point, that in order for Russia to become a permanent member of the United Nations, the Charter would have to be altered.
Right.
And what the disinformation is that everybody believes is that to get Russia out of the United Nations, the Charter would have to be altered.
Yes.
So this
And
is the talk about reform. So what you've got is Russian disinformation has been spread so deeply and so widely, and has actually lied and turned the whole situation, as Russia does, back to front, inside out, and upside down. So that is what is needed. Article 108.
yeah, go back to that. Yeah. 108 there. So it says amendments to the present charter shall come into force for all members of the United Nations when they have adopted by a vote of 2/3 of the members of the General Assembly and ratified in accordance with their respective constitutional processes by 2/3 of the members of the United Nations, including all permanent members of the Security Council. And of course, that hasn't happened, as you say.
Yeah. Now, so what are we left with? Russia is not in the United Nations. So from there, we go to line number 2. You can't remove Russia without reforming the United Nations. It's got to be reformed before you can remove Russia. There's a basic flaw in that argument. Can you figure it out?
Well, there's some kind of circularity going on here, isn't there?
Well, you can't remove something
That
that's
doesn't,
not
yeah.
there in the first place, and you don't need to remove something if it's not there in the first place.
It's a
And
fallacy
this,
of begging the question in philosophy. Yes.
right, and this is where, so everything I've said so far about the history of Russia not being in the United Nations, that's all stated clearly by the Ukraine Ministry of Foreign Affairs. But then they've jumped to, we can't get Russia out. It's not in, but we can't get it out. And this is why I have made that critique of the formal statement on the Ministry of Foreign Affairs website. Somehow, the Minister of Foreign Affairs and President Zelensky have been duped about what the legal situation is. And that is just absolutely mind-boggling.
So what's their statement that they've been duped about then?
Well, they're saying Russia's not on the UN, but we can't get it off.
Right.
Because it'd be vetoed. Well, it can't be vetoed because Russia isn't a permanent member.
Right. Yeah,
Now,
yeah. So
how we
that's that
approach
circularity.
this,
That's assuming. Yeah.
yeah. So, well, it's beyond any question of a doubt, Russia is not a member. There is only one other argument that has been raised, which is just absolutely pathetic, but of course that doesn't stop the Russians from raising it. And that is what's called estoppel. They say, look, you've let us sit on the United Nations, on the Security Council for 30 years, so you can't change your mind. And this is actually in this document on the Ukraine, or it's insinuated in that document. Now, number one, you can't change the law. That's like saying, if you stop there, just back half a screen, there. Now stop. Okay, down the bottom, the very bottom of that screen. That's like saying, if police tacitly consent to a crime being committed, it changes the law so it's not a crime anymore and people can do the crime.
Yeah.
So if the police turn a blind eye to somebody robbing and mugging people in the neighbourhood, then that person can then say, oh, it's not illegal anymore, I can keep doing it. No, it's just, it doesn't work. And the second, so that's the principal point. You cannot change the law. No amount of lying can change the United Nations Charter. There is only one way to change the United Nations Charter, and that's Amendment 308. Now, before you go off that page, just up a bit.
That's 108, Article 108 we're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, back, stop. No, up. Move it up a bit. Up. No, sorry, move it down.
Right.
Okay, now the bottom line there, okay, with this has actually been done before, and this is what I'm going to skip to now. There was a regime that occupied a membership, or they claimed a membership for 20 years with a veto in the United Nations and the United Nations Security Council. That was the Republic of China, which Chiang Kai-shek was kicked out of China in 20 years before, 1950, I think it was. And for the next 20 years, his regime, hiding in Taiwan, occupied the membership or exercised the membership of China, where the People's Republic of China was the government of China, was the true government of China, and was entitled to exercise China's membership on the United Nations. Now, eventually, somebody like me looked at the law and said, this is what we do. And we can now oh God, I hope it's there. If we scroll down to, I'm not sure if that resolution's there. It's on my other Substack page at the bottom, the critique of the,
This one.
yes, so we just scroll. Oh, is that the, sorry, which one?
I can try
The
and
critique, it was the critique page, right? So we scroll down from there. Yeah. Okay, just yeah, there.
Here we go. Yeah,
Okay,
there we go.
here it is. Okay, now this is what they did. They said that the People's Republic of China was the lawful representative of China. So they simply said that the Chiang Kai-shek's government had no right to exercise the membership. They had no place to stand, and they just chucked out the representatives. They couldn't throw out Chiang Kai-shek because he wasn't a member. China was the member, and its government had the right, but they expelled the representatives. So
Right.
there you see at the bottom.
Yeah.
So that is what needs to be done with Russia. Russia has got representatives there who have no right to any membership.
Is this just a case of, I mean, people must know this, but it's not like you're the only human being on earth that knows this. So, like, I assume that there's this bubbling knowledge that people are too afraid to try out. It's like the only way to
not afraid to try out.
Well, I was
But go
just
on.
say the only way to kind of bring about these changes, or to reform the UN, or to say that the Russian Federation are not members of the UN, let alone the UN Security Council, is to basically get the security guards in and say, like, we just had a look at the paperwork, Lavrov or whoever it is, and it turns out you're not welcome here, so you're gonna have to go. Like, but
Lavrov,
I presume
Lavrov was right there on the ground floor. Lavrov was in there when this happened, when this lie happened. And I have done some investigation, and I've got a fair idea. I've managed to get a fair idea of how this happened, because simultaneously with this, we had, and this is reported in a interview with I think the head of the Duma at the time of the 1993 coup, when Yeltsin drove the tanks on the Duma and arrested all of the politicians and killed an awful lot of people that nobody knows about really in the West. It was a massacre basically, and that is the real coup. Along with the two real coups, if I can diverge for 1 minute, the two real coups that occurred in Ukraine in 2014. The coup in Crimea, where the elected representatives were rounded up and forced to resign, and the coup in the Donbass, where the elected representatives were physically thrown out of parliament and usurped by Russian forces posing as Ukrainians. So those are the two real coups that happened in Ukraine in 2014.
And that's so
where,
frustrating that the Russian narrative that's pumped out is that the 2014 Euromaidan Yanukovych was a coup, and of course it wasn't.
No, Yanukovych sent his private police force to shoot into student protesters who were protesting against him breaking his election promises.
Yeah, absolutely.
That resulted in, of course, every babushka and their kids and dogs coming out and absolutely saying, get the hell out of here. We don't want you. You can't do that. However, they didn't make him go. He left of his own accord.
Yeah.
And after he had left with, I think, 60 billion stolen funds of the Ukrainian state, and having trashed the Ukrainian security records, their offices and everything, amongst other things, he, the remaining members of parliament, the Verkhovna Rada, which I'm probably not pronouncing correctly, but the Ukrainian National Parliament, unanimously, every single politician, including members of Yanukovych's party, impeached him.
Yeah.
So that was how Yanukovych was removed. They impeached him exactly the same as what's happening in America, and they called fresh elections. He was actually sacked by the elected parliament of Ukraine after he absconded to Russia.
Yeah, and so as Julian Roster, and thank you for this super chat, Julian says, call the UN bouncers. Your name's not down, you're not coming in. But that's broadly kind of what I don't know who would have to go about kind of sorting this out, but it's kind of what needs to happen. There needs to be the challenge to see whether the challenge holds, and then follow it through naturally. But there for one reason or another, there's no appetite for that. What's your opinion for why there's no appetite?
You've asked two questions there. So if we can go back to that critique tab,
yeah,
and scroll further down from there. Further down.
That's the conclusion.
Oh, no. Okay, we'll go up then.
Yeah.
Okay, stop there. Okay, now on the left-hand side of the screen, this resolution expelling the Kremlin imposter representatives is all that is necessary. It can be passed by a 51% majority of the United Nations General Assembly.
So not even a 2/3.
It cannot be vetoed. Permanent members, not even permanent members' votes are required. Only 51% of the United Nations General Assembly. And so on the left-hand side, the larger box, we can read it. And that recites all of the legal basis. And there is no doubt about this. It is beyond any question of a doubt. It's been done. And this is the same resolution, but applicable to Russia. Chiang Kai-shek made a false claim to the membership of China. Russia has made a false claim to the membership of the USSR. The fact that the USSR no longer exists only adds strength to it. But they've both done precisely the same thing. Regimes have made a wrongful claim to a membership. So this is what we say. Recognizing that the USSR is a subject of international law and a geopolitical reality no longer exists. That was stated by Russia itself in a treaty, 2 treaties. Accordingly, the USSR named memberships have expired. They no longer exist. So the next step is recognizing that states cannot continue memberships of other states that have ceased to exist. Now, apart from just leaving aside the fact that it's just a joke, Russia's claim to inheriting anything from the USSR, this was actually tested and was the subject of a decision in the United Nations. The decision was states cannot continue memberships of other states that have ceased to exist. And this was decided, ironically, the year after Russia started illegally sitting in the United Nations. And both the Security Council and the General Assembly ruled in the case of the Federal Socialist Republic of Yugoslavia, which broke up. The 5 member states all left. And all that was left in the Republic was Serbia and Montenegro. And they made a claim in the United Nations to continue the federal membership of Yugoslavia. So it was precisely the same as Russia.
This is
Well,
like
it was,
legal precedence. I mean, you can't get
you
like
can't get
stronger
around
than
them.
this.
You
This is
can't get any clearer. It's sitting there
yeah.
in plain view on the United Nations website. And there's the screenshots of it right there. So the only difference was that Serbia and Montenegro hadn't left the Federal Republic of Yugoslavia.
Yeah.
But notwithstanding that, even though they hadn't left, the Security Council declared that the Federal Republic of Yugoslavia had ceased to exist. And then, then we won't scroll down quite yet, but we'll come to it. So then we're in recognizing that states cannot continue memberships of other states, and I've put the reference to the 2 resolutions. The A is the General Assembly resolution, the SC is the Security Council resolution.
Yeah.
And we'll come and read those in a minute. So the entire foundation of Russia's claim of membership, namely a letter dated the 24th of December 1991 from Boris Yeltsin, president of a country which was not even a member of the UN, is without any legal authority, meaningless, and of no effect. We'll have a look at that letter in a minute. So we've got, this is the resolution, recognizing that Russia is not and never has been a member of the United Nations, and its presence is a violation of the United Nations Charter, because the United Nations can't have countries voting that are not members decide to expel the representatives from the place that they unlawfully occupy in the United Nations and in all organizations related to it. So that's the resolution that you put on the table. This resolution should have been tabled on the 2nd of March 2022. There were 143 countries that would have voted for that.
And now I guess like it's got to a point where Russia's been doing enough geopolitical machinations that you can't guarantee the votes would be as good as it would have been.
We can still guarantee it, and I'll tell you why we can still guarantee it. Because, and I've mentioned this in my other article, it is once that is placed face up on the table in the United Nations, it will be politically impossible for countries to vote in favour of a continuing violation of the United Nations. Politically impossible, because they will be facing their voters and they will be voting to violate the United Nations Charter in order to keep a terrorist dictatorship, enable
But
it to
yeah, but
continue terrorising the world.
I wonder, would enough of those nations actually care that they're in violation of their own charter? Like, I just don't know what would happen.
Well, the other thing is that it's legally impossible. It can't be done
Yeah.
because that would be admitting Russia to membership, and that can't be done without the procedure in Article 4 or an amendment under Article 108. It cannot be done. Now, the reason why so that's politically, okay, so that applies to countries like the UK and America, which have been lying for 33 years, and they organised it. They jacked this up. And I'll come to that in a minute why. But here we have, just right here, we've got the resolution of the Security Council dated the 19th of September 1992. Considering that the state formerly known, so here's the ruling that states cannot continue memberships of federations which have ceased to exist, even though the Security Council didn't have jurisdiction. Since there is no change to memberships, it's outside its powers in Articles 4 to 6 of the Charter. But nonetheless, it made a recommendation it couldn't pass it itself, but it could make a recommendation to the General Assembly. And it says, considering that the state formerly known as the Socialist Federal Republic of Yugoslavia has ceased to exist, Serbia and Montenegro cannot continue the membership of the former Federal Republic. And they recommend to the General Assembly that the General Assembly decides that the Federal Republic, Serbia and Montenegro should apply for membership and they shall not participate in the work of the General Assembly. So
until they get membership, they don't have a place. Interesting.
They're out of there. They're out. Trespassers.
You're out of Dodge. They are out of Dodge.
Russia is. Before we go past there, so now we have on the right, next to that, we have the General Assembly resolution. That was not passed with a 2/3 majority. It didn't need to be passed with a 2/3 majority. The resolution evicting Chiang Kai-shek in 1971 was passed with a 58% majority. And the reason for that, and the reason for that is because the Security Council, the provisions about membership only deal with admitting a country to membership, which they aren't doing, or evicting a member, which they aren't doing because there isn't any member to evict. So they're simply making a declaration and expelling trespassers. It's nothing to do with membership. And that falls under Article, I've written it above, I think it's Article 15, 15.1, I think it is, of the Charter, which is any other questions the General Assembly deals with. You see, the Security Council is acting as a delegate it's acting with delegated authority from the General Assembly. It acts on behalf of the members, and that's set out in Article 24 of the UN Charter.
But for
anything that's not specifically, any powers that are not specifically granted to it, it doesn't have any power.
But going back to the idea that Russia, the Russian Federation, isn't, formally a member of the
It's not
UN,
formally a member. It is not full
as
stop.
in, not a member. So Viggo Holmson says, in other words, all former republics of the USSR would have to apply for membership anew. I presume everyone else has, but Russia hasn't.
They did. Every single ex-member of the USSR applied immediately and was granted membership under Article 4.
But the
Yeltsin
Russian
thought
Federation
he'd
didn't.
be smart and con his way into
This is
getting a
a
veto.
drop mic moment. It's like,
It's
there you
like,
go, Russia.
this is Russia. Hello, Russia. This is what they do. And they've been doing it for a long time.
Smoke and mirrors. Yeah.
Okay,
Wow. It's just,
I'll tell you, this is absolutely watertight, rock solid. There is no way around it. You've got the law sitting on the United Nations website. You've got Russia declaring that the USSR no longer exists. You've got it leaving the USSR. It's total smoke and mirrors. Now, to come to your next question was, Russia's got so much control of the world that nobody will want to vote for it. Well, actually, every single country that wants to get our United Nations back and wants to be protected and wants to run this world democratically will vote for it, probably including a number, all except the complete Russian puppets. All of the African states want to get the United Nations working. Russia and NATO are second choice. They're the gangs. We want the police.
yeah.
We
And to
want our police. We want our world police back, which is all of the countries working together and sending it and working legally to intervene. And that's where we come to what will happen with Ukraine, what will happen with Africa, which takes me to the third lie, which is that the UN can't use force to stop aggression. I've come across that. Oh, yes, it can. I've just got a blank spot here. Article 24. No, I beg your pardon. It's 40. If you go onto the images tab and you scroll down towards the bottom, I think it's Article 42.
So that's the White House.
It's above the OSCE. That's just an aside.
23, 5, 6, 4.
Haven't I got it there?
Yeah, no, not to worry. But
okay.
Explain it.
Have a look at Article 42 of the United Nations.
I'll try and find it. Yeah.
There. I didn't have my substack raised.
Article 42, United Nations. Here it comes. Article 42. Right. Good old internet. So, should the Security Council consider the measures provided for in Article 41 would be inadequate or proved to be inadequate, and may take such action by air, sea, or land forces as may be necessary to maintain or restore international peace and security? That seems pretty.
Yes, and then it continues on. If you look at the right-hand side. If we go back, because you read that only had half of the article in it. On the right-hand side, these actions include demonstrations, blockades, and other options by the armed forces of UN member states.
Yeah,
the
absolutely.
Security Council has unlimited ability to use force to intervene.
Interesting.
So now you've got coming back to Ukraine. You've got all these big, strong nations quaking in their boots at Russia. They all know that Russia is not a member of the United Nations. They all know. I've watched them lying. I've watched the US Secretary of State lying. I've watched the head of NATO lying that Russia is in the United Nations. They know that Russia is not in the United Nations. How did it happen?
I can see why you're so obsessed with this, because I know from our interactions that you're like, come on, what are you doing? Why aren't you freaking talking about this more? Like, it's essentially what you've been saying to me
well,
for the best part of a year.
Why.
But and I get that, and then you get this added level of frustration that it's so bloody obvious that it's almost like it's so obvious that it's that you can't do anything about it, or people aren't willing to do something about it, and then that adds to your frustration. It's just like this, oh, come on, just do something.
Well, what's happening is you've got these NATO countries. I wouldn't say Poland does. Ukraine definitely doesn't know it. Ukraine, either Zelensky and Kuleba are lying, and deliberately throwing their country to the wolves, which is just inconceivable. So they don't know. They have been lied to.
Yeah,
they've been lied to by their legal department. Now, I'm going to tell you a funny story that happened to me. A couple of days ago, I thought, blow this. I'm going to sit down. I've done all this work, prepared for your broadcast. I'm going to send that critique to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And I sent it directly to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs with a letter, which I'm going to turn into an open letter because of what happened next. The letter asked for that critique to be handed directly to President Zelensky and Kuleba, because I said somewhere somebody is not telling you about this. And so next minute, as we say in New Zealand, the email gets forwarded to the Australian Embassy.
So it goes from the Ukrainian Ministry of Foreign Affairs to
directly from the Ukrainian. I've sent it directly to the Ukrainian Ministry of Foreign Affairs, setting out the significance. I've listed it all, and I'll post that letter as an open letter, saying, can this please be referred directly to Zelensky and Kuleba, because they need to know this, and they obviously don't know it. So it gets fired to the Australian Embassy. Now, if you were an embassy, would you be employing somebody? I mean, last time I looked, the Australian Embassy was not in charge of Ukraine's United Nations and Russia relations.
That's just going to go straight in the bin, straight in the junk folder or whatever. Yeah.
It was deniably disappeared.
I wonder.
And they I don't know if it was deliberate. I suspect it wasn't, but that was CC'd to me.
Yeah.
So I have the CC of it being forwarded without any comment. Not can you investigate this person? Just binned. Bin 13'd.
Well, so NIL, Neil here has said, I keep asking, Jonathan, doesn't this void all decisions by the Security Council? And he's 75 years of Security Council decisions are now out the window, buckle up. And then he's like, nobody wants to eradicate 33 years of Security Council decisions. It would be a disaster bigger than the Ukraine war.
No, it wouldn't. Firstly, it doesn't invalidate any decisions. All it does is invalidate any votes by Russia. So
Right. So you'd have to
the
see if there are any votes that only missed out by one,
so
and then go.
anything that's actually been anything that that has not been voted for by Russia, which is in fact the way that the veto is structured. Anything that Russia has effectively vetoed, that's invalid. That vetoing is invalid. So all of those resolutions, in fact, should have the status of resolutions. But there is no chaos at all. The law deals every day with nullities.
Yeah.
We have judicial review of things going back 20 years. In Parliament, we have reviews of parliaments, councils. This is just a common or garden thing. The law knows how to deal with that.
Fantastic. Well, okay. So I think this case is pretty obvious to me now that you've explained it so in such a well-structured manner. What can we do about this? Like,
Okay.
where do we go?
What we need to do is exactly what Ukraine did when it was invaded. We've got to tell everybody. We've got to tell everybody. And what I am asking everybody to do is to upvote this and share it, because it has to reach everybody.
Have there been? Because I'm pretty sure
It's only public opinion that is going to change it.
I'm sure you sent me a couple of links of articles where this, or maybe I sent you, I can't remember. But this has been discussed a little bit in some mainstream media articles, but just not in a.
Yes, I'm glad you brought that up. I was, during the course of my investigations, trying to find out what was going on, what was the legal situation. I came across a number of air quote expert opinions, close air quote, which basically fudged and lied. And I came across a very prominent site called kickrussiaout.org, which I initially thought they published an article in Time magazine, which says exactly the same thing that Ukraine Ministry of Foreign Affairs says, which suggests to me that Ukraine Ministry of Foreign Affairs has been misled by them. They have a large number of names there, none of whom I recognise and none of whom I would, but it looks awfully kosher. It looks like there's people from Yale and who have a different name from Mearsheimer and a different name from Sachs, but all these supposed experts who say, oh, look, we've tried really hard, we've got to research this, and there is nothing, there is not one shred of research on that website. It is a disinformation website saying, look, the only thing we can do is vote in this petition. So I went and I voted in the petition. And then I realized that this was specifically directed to people like me who wanted to investigate, and then we thought that we'd done everything that we could. So we stopped looking. It's a Russian smokescreen. And there is no research on there. And I've actually on my Substack done a separate article which has pulled it apart with screenshots from it, showing exactly what it's doing. And that's you can see that in my index.
So knowledge is power. The Substack here, vlp888.substack.com. Go and check out what Talaria
and if you
has.
go into archive, if you click on archive, you'll see, scroll down, fact check,
Yeah, that one.
refuting the lie that Russia can't be kicked out. Kick Russia out as a disinformation site, as the troll site. And then I've taken the
Interesting.
screenshots and
Interesting.
analysed it. Now, the
Yeah.
last bit of your question is, how did this happen? And why are people denying it? Now, that took an awful lot of digging because the algorithm has covered up everything that I've told you tonight. Google's algorithm, you will not find it. I found some things accidentally when I translated my search into Ukrainian or Russian and did a search on those on the Ukrainian and then translated the results back. And so I came across a series of articles that have been taken off the web in a Russian newspaper dating from 2013. And they were interviews with people about the 2003 Russian coup. And one in particular described exactly what happened with Yeltsin, and who did it, and it was a group, a neoliberal lobby group, US lobby group, with all the famous economists, neoliberal economists of the time. Is it Milton Friedman or something?
Milton Friedman and Chicago boys,
the ones that set up the South American dictatorships, okay?
Yeah.
Those guys. And
Chicago
the way
boys.
that they did it was by getting the dictators getting the governments to asset strip their countries so that they devoided themselves of any ability to pay to keep their social structure going. And so these people, with the support of the US Treasury, according to this person, and the support of the World Bank, went to Yeltsin and said, "We'll help you if you asset strip the USSR." And there was that is what led to the crisis in 1993, because Yeltsin was doing this and the parliament was saying, "No, stop, you're exceeding your powers, we don't want to do this." And lots of people died, lots of people got shot, and Yeltsin won. He was supported by the US in doing this. He asset stripped the country. It was turned into
The
another
oligarchy
South
it is now.
American dictatorship, but with a veto. And the veto, I think, was a part of this arrangement. The Americans arranged to do this. And they all got together and they lied. Now, if we go down to, if you'd like to look in the images at the letter from Yeltsin, that's very telling.
Let me just get it right. Okay. And it's at the bottom, this one, if I remember here.
It's no. That's the OSCE. It's higher up. It's a sort of black-coloured thing.
Black-coloured thing. Are you going back to the other?
There it is.
Oh, that one. Okay.
But next one up. Okay. Oh no, next one above that. That one. Okay. This is the letter that Russia wrote to get onto the United Nations. This is the single document that exists as to how Russia got into the United Nations. Now, you can see from that document that all he says is it's continued. He doesn't give any reasons for any claim.
It's just a mere assertion, which has low legal basis.
He gives no legal basis, no argument, nothing whatsoever. Now, what that tells anybody with half a brain is that this is a jack up, and all they wanted was the letter. It's already been jacked up. He didn't, you will notice, even try to claim that Russia inherited anything. And the reason that he didn't try to claim that is because anybody that read that letter would have absolutely exploded into print and disproved it. So it's
just odd that the obvious thing to have done would have been to put this to the vote, and it never got put to the vote. So
no, they couldn't put it to the vote. They would have had to amend
the charter. Yeah, the Article 108.
And
absolutely.
nobody was going to want to do that. This was a part of the bribery to turn Russia into a dictatorship. They created the oligarchs. They created the terrorist state. They created a Frankenstein with a veto that doesn't exist. And that is why it might have looked like a good idea at the time to try and bribe Russia, but and it might have been like, oh, we'll wait and see what happens. But we've waited and we've seen what happened. We've seen well and truly enough.
Yeah, and just to I presume, I don't know if this is a pro-Russian troll or something. Public opinion, you will not do it. I'm afraid the ship has sailed. Russia entered the UN after the 1991 breakup of the USSR. No other members of the USSR objective. We dealt with that at the beginning of the video, so go back and watch the beginning.
Of the internet is bots. That was about months ago. There's a study on it. Anyway, no, that is classic. That's exactly what they do, and I could analyze that. We'll do that when we do disinformation.
Yeah,
but now there's one more thing to look at, and that is, I think it's above there. This is the explanatory note on the UN website. Okay, now this explanatory note and the letter were deleted from the United Nations website somewhere at the end of January or the very beginning of February this year.
You're joking, really?
This has been taken from the United Nations. You can't, I had the link, I saved the link, and when I clicked on it, it's gone. And when I did the search for the title of the page, it's gone. And this is in Web Archive.
Yeah.
In the archive.org, which archives all web pages. I hope they've got really strong protection, because they're going to be the next target to get rid of this stuff. Because as you can see, this says they've provided a scan. The material is not issued as a UN document. This is the letter. The practice of the Security Council states Russian Federation did not apply for membership. By a letter dated, blah, 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 Russian Federation informed the Secretary General that the membership was being continued. The position of the Russian Federation was not challenged. Okay, then we scroll down to the next bit. Matters brought to the attention of the Security Council. This is page 2, because I've screenshotted that page. But the link to the web archive is on that, in that Substack. So hang on. Oh, yeah. I mean, so it has never been responded to. It's never been continued. All that's happened is that nobody said anything. I don't know how many were told were told about that letter or seriously continued it, but it appears that in the fraught circumstances after World War II, it may have been goodwill. They might have thought, look, we'll bring Russia in, hopefully that'll make them into good guys. Ha ha ha. It didn't. But it's time
I
to
mean, of
expose
course,
that lie.
that's actually a really good point, because this was at the time when Europe and the US were wanting to bring Russia into the fold, and the dissolution of the USSR was an
We're
attempt to,
desperately working
as you
on
say, you've got neoliberals working to get capitalism working to globalize the former USSR and Russia in particular, to bring them into the fold and then make them one of us. And hopefully by osmosis that would work. And then if we
well,
don't challenge them in the UN, then actually we've got a way of working with them.
yeah. If I can just correct you there,
Mm-hmm.
no, they weren't trying to correct any of the other ex-Soviet states. They couldn't get out fast enough. They wanted to be democratic. They wanted to be have varying forms, moderate capitalism. The only country that didn't was the one that the US gave the veto to and got them to asset strip. And there's another little sideline of that, which is, whose property did they asset strip and give to the oligarchs? Because I haven't seen with any clarity that that property did not belong to the other Soviet republics. Under the USSR constitution, everything that the USSR owned, all the railways, roads, aeroplanes, businesses, oil companies, mines, belonged to the people of the Soviet Union, which is of all of the 15 republics.
And that
It's
wasn't, I
never
guess, a
been divided.
dissolution. Yeah, dissolution of the USSR meant that, well, it didn't mean that. It just happened that most of that ends up going to the Russian Federation.
Well, no, it devolves on the people of the USSR because that's
Well,
who
it
it
should
belongs
do.
to.
Yeah, it should do.
So
Yeah.
anyway, but that's another topic which I haven't looked into in detail, but it's just something that I've flagged. So the whole thing is just rotten and corrupt. Now, as far as where the goodwill level is now, those trolls, as I've said, they're promoted by YouTube. Those troll comments and intelligent comments are screened out and either hidden or deleted.
Yes. So just to
So it's
say,
just
just before we
completely
come
false.
to, yeah, just because we're going to have to come to the end of this in a second,
Yeah.
because I have to shoot off in 5. But actually, you've done an amazing job, and this is interesting for all of you out there, because YouTube, as we know, is deleting so many comments. This is actually nothing to do with the UN Security Council thing anymore. But actually, Talaria has put together some information that is pertinent to all of you regarding the situation with YouTube comments. So we got YouTube censorship of comments, screenshots, and analysis. And there is an awful lot of data that Talaria has put together to show that YouTube are deleting comments or hiding comments, or something's going on. Do you want to quickly just explain this?
Yeah, they're doing both. So I tend to, I have tried to write long, detailed comments with explaining what I've been saying tonight, but actually in clearer detail. Numbered, bang, 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 bang. This is the relevant facts. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This is the law. 1, 2, 3, 4. And they are deleted. They're not hidden. So that when I go to and any of your listeners who do intelligent comments will find this happening too. You go back to make a change to it, to edit it, and when you try to save the edit, it throws up an error, which means it's been deleted. So that's one thing. Now, these screenshots don't contain any deleted comments, but I have sent you directly a couple of my comments which have been deleted, one of which you
Yeah.
read out, which was quite funny because that's the one that we got that troll saying, oh, yes, Russia was admitted to the UN. It was Resolution 46/1 of 1992. And when I looked it up, it was the admission of North and South Korea. And that's what led me into the investigation of what had been decided.
And it's I've done a little bit of research myself, and going on to Reddit threads where people are complaining massively about YouTube hugely deleting comments. Lots of people adding a political slant to it. There are people concerning themselves with criticizing Israel, saying a lot of their comments have been deleted. I don't know whether it's just trigger words. I don't know whether it's someone setting out with a nefarious political intent, or whether it's just a misfiring of their bots and algorithms.
No, you look at that. That was just a beautiful little example, and it was on Times Radio. It was on a Times Radio upload, an English Times Radio upload, and so the deleted ones don't show. But you can look for yourself. I've highlighted the ones that are hidden, and you can compare the one-liners with the one-liners that are shown on the right-hand side, and they have. It's very subtle. So you've got I'm pretty sure it was either you or Professor Gerdes. I can't remember which. I think it was Professor Gerdes who was chortling over this person who was telling him that they went onto Russian channels and pro-Russian channels and did very subtle.
Yes, that's him. He
Comments.
did a video on that. Yeah.
And if you look through those comments on the right-hand side, they're all that type of thing. They sound like they're sympathetic, but then you see each of them is a put down saying, "Oh, you really haven't got a hope," or "They're really strong." Without exception, they're like that. And then you go to the one-liners on the left-hand side, and they're the longer ones. Just there aren't any longer ones showing there, but in the one that I've sent of yours, there are longer ones that are shown. But if you scroll down there a bit, well, you can highlight that bit. Down the bottom, there's one-liners. See these one-liners? No, up. Just the one-liners there. Okay, they are shorter than the one-liners, so it's not length, and you can see for yourself what the difference is. These are so they're not aggrandizing Putin. They're not promoting Putin or making him look strong or making it look hopeless. Any form of resistance. They're ridiculing him. Okay, Times Radio never heard of London being the laundering capital of the world. An election that's the choice between a psychopath or a corpse, only in Russia, which is quite a funny comment.
Are these the ones that get deleted? Is that what you're saying?
Those are the ones that are hidden. Those pink highlighted ones are hidden. So if you compare those with the ones on the other side, and come on, everybody knows. Right. And then you look at the ones on the other side.
So just to explain to people, you've got two sides here. One, you can arrange comments on a YouTube video by top comments or by newest first. So on the left, it's the newest first, so the newest comments that come down, and sometimes they give you different results. So you can say, I'm arranging this by newest first, and it'll give a certain number of comments, and then you arrange it by top comments, and it gives you a different number of comments, and then doesn't show others, and you can see some weird things going on.
It's simpler than that. The statistics are actually at the top of that page. They're the same everywhere.
Yeah.
But if you scroll up to my text at the top above there, that's it. Okay. So the default is sort by top. So everybody who looks at the comments, they only see that one. And here it says 25 comments. The top shows only 9. inane one-liners generally emphasizing Wagner or Putin's power. When you sort by newest, 9 more show, including 5 1 to 2 liners, so they're the same as the ones that show, same length, mostly belittling Wagner or Putin. 6 comments are not shown at all out of that 25. So what's happening is YouTube is promoting comments of a particular slant, and it's not me, you can look at it for yourself, is promoting those comments of a particular slant which get likes and replies, which mean that people believe them. So that is how Russia is garnering, spreading influence through your uploads.
So if they
And
know
try
the sorts of
game.
comments, if they know the sorts of divisive comments that get more likes and get more traction, then those are the ones that trolls en masse will do, and therefore they proliferate more, and therefore people get a sense of that being a general opinion.
Yes,
That's how
but
I would interpret that.
they're not divisive in this one. I mean, the
Yeah.
comments that were missed out were they're both snappy, if you like.
Yeah.
But they're like that comment that you showed just before. Give up. Nobody's listening to you. Nobody's going to want to do it.
Yeah.
That's the sort of comments that are promoted.
So
And
there's
I will send you the one. I'm sorry, I didn't get to send you the high resolution screenshot.
yeah, there's
of
one
your
there's
but
one of mine that you had done over here that is just one of my own comments, which is absolutely massive, but it comes up a bit blurred, unfortunately, and not that one. Anyway, the point being that there is a lot of issue with with comments on YouTube that we are dealing with on a daily basis. Something about YouTube is deleting or hiding comments. It is not me. It's never me. I don't have time to be wasting my time deleting comments almost arbitrarily. So just to let you know that this is a YouTube issue that other channels have long been complaining about as well. No one appears to quite know the rhyme or reason. The question is whether the Russian troll farms have a handle on what the rhyme and reason is, and whether they can manipulate that and sort of game the system. That's
what's happening is that the YouTube is violating freedom of speech. YouTube is violating the American Constitution, and they need to be regulated, and they need to be policed. They need to be policed so that they're not doing this.
Strong words. Yeah. You need to be regulated so that you allow freedom. But that's the kind of crazy situation it is. Like, how else, they need to be, something needs to change, right?
It's not crazy. We're regulated so that we're not murdered in the street.
Yeah, absolutely.
Allows us our freedom. We're free from crime.
Yeah. No, you don't need to convince me. It's just some hardcore free speech advocates will be like, no. But of course, it's precisely not what is happening here. So free speech is being arbitrarily censored by YouTube, or maybe not arbitrarily. Just before we get to the end, because I have to shoot off in a second, but I just want to say a big thanks before I thank you, of course, Talaria. Johnny Christensen, thank you for your super sticker. Whoa. Really generous.
Share Brian, it and like, please, everybody.
Yes, we're going to get onto that big time.
We want this to go viral.
Yes.
It's got to go viral. That's the only way that people are going to know, because I'm the only one that said anything. There are things that are in Ukrainian buried that I've found, but they've still got that non sequitur. Russia's not in the UN, but we can't get it out.
Yeah. Thank you to Brian Ivey. Really appreciated for your continued support, mate. Julian Rossiter, as ever, fantastic support. Thanks to Richard Bennett, always gifting memberships. And by the way, if anyone comes across Lawrence22, please give him my wishes and tell him to come back. And what happened there? Mitch Mazarol, such a legend. Thanks for your Canadian love there. Thanks for making this stream happen. Super informative content. So thank you very much indeed, Talaria. It was super informative content. And as you say, it's content that needs to get out there. There just needs to be this this gathering traction and momentum to get this talked about in the public sphere much more, because this seems so blatantly obvious, and yet for something that's so obvious, it's very little known.
Well, it explains why Russia has no respect for the law, has contempt for the law. And it's the answer to France and Germany and America hand-wringing about, oh, Russia's going to shoot us if we go in there. If Russia goes out, the United Nations will be able to authorize multinational police forces to go in there and eject the invaders, on the basis that if Putin tells his troops to touch one of the UN forces, he's dead meat. And secondly, establish a buffer zone in Russia. That is the only permanent solution that we can get. It's not going to happen if the gangs are warring. It's just going to be one gang against another, and nobody's going to win.
And of course, the UN has generally released resolutions, and there are these UN votes that have been siding broadly with Ukraine. So it's not as if the UN is somehow sitting on the fence here. It's obvious who the perpetrators are here, and who are breaking international legal precedents and laws and so on and so forth. So yeah, it seems like the UN would find with Ukraine, as you would expect,
with the rule of law.
Well, it's not about finding with Ukraine, it's finding with, like you said, you're pro Ukraine, you're pro justice. And I think that's a fantastic way of putting it. Well, look, Talaria, like, as what now Stinky says, great work, Talaria, thank you. I can't say that enough. So great work, thank you, really appreciate all the work you put in, and hopefully we'll return to this, and I'll try and return to this in my videos in conversation and reference this, because I think there does, I mean, unfortunately the writing establishment, the media organization I was writing for, has now run out of money and has ceased to be. So I'm not going to be doing my journalism going forward, but this would have been my next article, absolutely guaranteed. But at the moment, I'm not writing for the time being. I don't know what I'm going to be doing with that, but this would have been, like, I would have been trying to put that out there. So we need to keep talking about this. Throw this idea to MPs, to parliamentarians, to people in the media sphere. If you have contacts, get them to talk about this. Why is this not being talked about enough? That's my request to all of you out there listening. Talaria, would you like the final words?
Well, I'd invite people to ask any questions, because I have researched all aspects of this, and I'd be happy to come back and answer any questions on another occasion.
Absolutely. Yeah, that sounds great. And please check out, as I said, Talaria's Substack, Knowledge is Power, vlp888.substack.com, and then you can see all of the information that's very clearly laid out there for you. Any other final word, Talaria?
I think I did have one, but I forgot it. Oh yes, I like. I'm going to steal Operator Starsky's motto: "The truth is mightier than the sword, and this is the mightiest truth of all." Who is Putin going to nuke if the whole world kicks him out and sends in peacekeepers?
There you go. We'll leave you with that. Well, look, thanks again, Talaria. Really appreciate that, and well said at the end there. And thank you very much to those in the live stream with such lively chat, really good conversation going on to the side there. Really appreciate that. And thanks for all your support for those who supported the channel. It means an awful lot. In the meantime, take care, everybody. Check out Talaria's Substack, and I'll see you in the next video. Toodle pips. Stay on Talaria, and I'll speak to you just after in the green room.
Okay.
For everyone else, Toodle pips.